You know, we humans, we're just wired to be storytellers. It's what we do. We look for patterns in the chaos, and we build these big narratives to make sense of the world, and, well, our place in it. But sometimes, those stories take on a life of their own. So let's dive into one of the biggest, wildest stories of this century, a story that all kicked off with a single, ominous date.
Remember this one? December 21st, 2012. For what felt like forever, you just couldn't escape this date. First, it was just a whisper on the internet, right? Then suddenly it's in the headlines, and there was this global buzz of anxiety, anticipation. Everyone was waiting for something huge.
And yeah, depending on who you were talking to, it was supposed to be the day of a massive cataclysm, or maybe a spiritual awakening, or, just the end, the final page in the whole story of us.
And that, right there, is the real question we're getting into. How did a simple date from an ancient calendar blow up into this massive global event? And maybe more importantly, what does that whole saga tell us about our own deep, fundamental need to create stories?
So, let's talk scale. How big a deal was this really? Well, this wasn't just some fringe internet theory. No, the 2012 scare went completely mainstream. And the way people reacted was, well, it was all over the place.
I mean, the reactions were just wildly different. You had people in Mexico and Guatemala throwing these huge end-of-the-world parties. At the same time, people in Russia and China were hoarding survival supplies. And get this, the Prime Minister of Australia actually recorded a joke speech about demonic hellbeasts and, I kid you not, the triumph of K-pop. Meanwhile, this tiny village in France got totally overwhelmed because people thought a nearby mountain was a garage for UFOs that were going to save them. It was this incredible global cocktail of fear, fun, and just pure absurdity.
And we've actually got the data to prove it. An Ipsos poll at the time found that 1 in 10 people, think about that, 1 out of every 10 people on the planet genuinely thought the world might end. And almost that many felt real, actual anxiety about it. Now, sure, most people were unconcerned, but that's still millions and millions of people who got swept up in the story.
Okay, so where did this whole story even come from? Let's peel back the layers and see how a really sophisticated ancient calendar got twisted into a modern-day apocalypse.
So, the starting point is the Mesoamerican long count calendar. And this thing is an incredible piece of ancient science. The date we're all talking about, December 21st, 2012, was simply the day a major cycle, a Baktun, was ending. Honestly, think of it like your car's odometer rolling over from 99,999 back to 0. It's not the engine exploding, it's just the start of a new count.
And this is where you really see the two worlds collide. For actual Mayan scholars, the end of a big cycle was a reason to celebrate. It was the transition to a new era. But for the doomsday theorists, oh man, it became the trigger for everything you could possibly imagine. Rogue planets showing up out of nowhere, massive solar flares, the whole 9 yards. It was a complete fiction built on top of a historical fact.
And the experts were super clear about this from day one. As the Mayan scholar Sandra Noble put it, the whole thing was a modern invention. The ancient Maya were not predicting doom. For them, just making it to the end of a cycle was a massive accomplishment, something worth celebrating. And okay, here is the final nail in the coffin for the entire doomsday theory. The Maya themselves carved inscriptions pointing to dates way, way into the future. One inscription at a site called Palenque actually projects all the way forward to the year 4772. They clearly were not expecting the story to just stop.
So if the prophecy wasn't real, why did so many people buy into it? Well, it's because it plugs right into a deep part of our psychology, our brain's programming to find patterns in random noise. Let's look at another, much smaller example of that same human impulse at work.
Have you ever heard of this? It's called streetlight interference, or SLI. It's this idea that certain people, they call them sliders, can actually make streetlights turn on or off just by being near them. You walk by, a light flickers out. It feels personal, it feels powerful, almost like magic.
But just like with the Mayan calendar, there are two totally different ways to explain this. The SLIder story is all about a mysterious, personal power. The skeptical view, though, points to things like confirmation bias, right? You only remember the one time the light flickered, not the hundreds of times it didn't. Or it could just be lamp cycling, which is a known glitch in old streetlights. And this gets to a really crucial point. Our brains are wired to prefer the exciting, meaningful story over the boring, technical one.
So you can start to see the formula here, right? It doesn't matter if it's a global apocalypse or just a flickering streetlight. The process is basically the same. You start with a real thing, a calendar, a faulty lamp.
You add a much more exciting story to it. You spread that story around, and it catches on because it fills that deep psychological need for meaning. I mean, this instinct probably gave our ancestors an evolutionary edge, right? Seeing a pattern in some rustling grass could mean spotting a predator. Today, that same wiring just makes us build modern myths.
And this impulse doesn't just apply to global panics or weird coincidences. We do the exact same thing inside our own heads. We create these really powerful, personal stories to make sense of who we are. It's called our personal mythology. It's the collection of stories, the internal script we use to define ourselves. We cast ourselves in certain roles, we identify with specific characters, and we use these stories to figure out how to navigate our own lives.
Let's use a modern example. Take the Megumi Fushiguro archetype from the anime Jujutsu Kaisen. Someone who connects with this archetype isn't just a fan, they're actually using it as a lens to see themselves, so they might recognize their own ability to stay calm under pressure as a tactical strength. Their choice to keep a small, tight circle of friends becomes unwavering loyalty. But it also gives them a language for their struggles, like a tendency to put others first to a dangerous degree, or a deep fear that their own true potential is some kind of monster that needs to be controlled, not unleashed.
And what's so powerful about an archetype like this is how it reframes the things we might think are negative. Your shadow, your quietness, your sadness, your hidden depths, it's not a weakness you have to get rid of. It's a resource, it's a toolbox. By adopting this story, a person can start to see their emotional distance not just as a flaw, but as the very source of their tactical mind. It's a story that can turn what feels like a weakness into a huge source of strength. Okay, so let's bring all this home. From a massive, supposed cosmic event, all the way down to the quiet stories that shape our inner lives.
This right here is the key, that deep human need to find a pattern, to build a story. It's universal. It's the engine that powered the 2012 craze, it's behind the streetlight phenomenon, and it fuels the powerful archetypes we use to understand ourselves. It is all part of the same human storytelling machine.
So whether we're looking up at the stars or we're looking in the mirror, we are constantly creating narratives. We build myths to explain the world out there, and we build myths to explain the world in here. It's one of the most fundamental things we do as people. And that leaves us with one last really crucial thought. The stories we tell ourselves have incredible power. They shape what we believe, how we act, our very identity. So the real question isn't just about the stories floating around out there in the world. It's about the ones inside of you. What story are you telling yourself today? And is it the one you need?